Hey guys, welcome to part 3. We left off part 3 of what? Well, in case you didn't see, Refuge Recovery, a Buddhist path to recovering from addiction by Levine. And we're continuing on where we left off in chapter 1, listing off questions that we must answer as our inventory. I want to back up a couple of them. List any missed opportunities or failures in your life that were due to your addiction. Next, list the ways in which your addiction has made your life different from the way you wanted or intended it to be. Next is look at your relationship history. And consider how your addiction may have caused harm in your relationships. Name some of the people and ways that you hurt them. Then, how has your addiction affected your sex life? That's an interesting one. The next one is, has your sexual conduct hurt others? Name the people and be specific about how you caused harm. It's interesting for me because I think I won't be the only one that reads that and goes, does it count when they won't have sex with you and they're like married to you? I was like, wait, what? Just trying to add a little humor. I missed this. I guess that wasn't really funny. But anyway, in retrospect, it's good that I can laugh. Hey. Okay, has your sexual conduct hurt others? Name the people and be specific about how you caused harm. Are there any other ways that you have experienced or caused suffering in relation to your addiction? I'm going to read that one again. Are there any other ways that you have experienced or caused suffering in relation to your addiction? List them here. Don't leave anything out. Next, what would your life look like if you were free from the suffering that addiction has caused? Be specific. Allow yourself to be generous and hopeful. Lastly, we have, where do you see yourself in 5 years? 10 years and 20 years. Hi, kitty. Kitty, you're in front of the camera, honey. Thank you. Now, moving on to chapter 2. And this is the cause of addiction is repetitive craving. So what is the cause of addiction? Is repetitive craving. We have come to understand that all forms of addiction have their roots in the natural human tendency to crave for life to be more pleasurable and less painful than it actually is. Sit and meditate on that one for a minute. Yeah. The addict is not at fault for the root causes and conditions that lead to addiction. Let's not run over that line. Let me repeat that line. The addict is not at fault for the root causes and conditions that led to addiction, only for the habitual reactive pattern that perpetrated it. We are all born into bodies that are ruled by a survival instinct that is out of harmony with reality. Wow, that's an interesting way to put it. We are all born into bodies that are ruled by a survival instinct that is out of harmony with reality. The normal state of human beings is a sleep-like state of non-wisdom. I guess we're getting into the Buddhist part of this, huh? The evolutionary process of human beings is dictated by a natural desire to live and to pursue happiness. But our survival instinct, which influences the body and mind, is really just the unrealistic expectations that life is always pleasurable and never painful. Our bodies naturally crave pleasure, which we think equals happiness, safety, and survival. We hate pain, which we think equals unhappiness and death. The addict is an extreme manifestation of the normal human condition. It is not a lack of morality or any deep character flaw that creates addiction. It is almost always just a lot of pain, and a lack of tolerance or compassion for this pain that get us stuck in the repetitive and habitual pattern of drinking, drugging, overeating, or whatever action our addictions take. In some cases, the underlying causes are not as clear, but the suffering that addiction creates is always obvious and undeniable. Craving a pleasurable existence is normal. Though our natural lust for pleasure and hatred of pain, we will survive for as long as the circumstances and the body's impertinence allow. We need these base cravings to survive. They are not the enemy. They are a necessary function of life. But as we know all too well, a life lived chasing pleasure and running from pain leads only to more and more suffering. And in our case, addiction to the substances or behaviors that have given us temporary relief. A quick note for some of you who might be getting hit with this and saying, why the F is she laughing? Well, because I get it. What is that old saying? It's better to laugh than cry. Our survival instinct does not grant us happiness, only temporary survival. A life based on craving and aversion is a miserable existence, even for non-addicts, right? Even for non-addicts. But for addicts, it means a life that eventually becomes unbearable. I like this book now. One of the other very important factors here is the truth of impertinence. We are born into a mind/body process that is constantly changing in a constantly changing world. Everything is impermanent. Every pleasure, every pain, every body. We're all perishable, right? But the survival instincts crave permanence and control. The body wants pleasure to stay forever and pain to go away forever. The body wants pleasure to stay forever and pain to go away forever. This is the very cause of attachment and aversion. The fact of impertinence leads to a generalized unsatisfactoriness. Unsatisfactoriness. Is that a word, or did they just make that up? Unsatisfactoriness. Many times we are drinking, using, or acting out in a direct response to the unsatisfactoriness of life. We are trying to escape from it or to create a new temporary reality to replace it. But the truth is, we are all constantly struggling with loss. We are constantly grieving the loss of each experience and trying in vain to create stability out of transience. Addictions are almost always created out of the vain hope to control the amount of pleasure and pain we experience. We become addicted to pleasant feelings that drugs, alcohol, sex, food, and money temporarily create in us. The main problem here is that we are addicted to impertinent phenomena. When we get strung out on an impertinent experiences such as drugs, sex, food, people, places, or things, we are always left with the stress and the grief of loss, since our intoxication can never last. When we spend our lives avoiding unpleasant experiences by taking another drink, devouring another chocolate cake, or masturbating for the 7th time today, we are actually causing the unpleasant experiences to last longer than they need to. You know, sometimes I get the little voice in my head that says, don't say that, Jeannette, and I never listen to it, and I won't listen to it now. I always see that masturbation for the 7th time today thing, and it was always, and whenever, I've never seen it be directed to a girl. That always gets thrown like it's just the guys. And I'm going to be the first girl I've ever talked to or seen anywhere or heard of that will just tell you, yeah, that was a problem for me too. What? No, that was. And it was before I was an addict. And then that was, which is funny. in some circles. But no, this is before I was an addict. Why? Because I was sexually abused for 14 years. And it was horrid. And so when I became a young person, that I had my own place and I was living alone, had, you know, everything was me, myself, and I, taking care of me, myself, and I, alone, working 2 jobs and all that, I remember that became an issue. Because I didn't want to have relationships with people, with anybody. I just wanted to work and do my shows and build my sets, my theatrical sets that I did, and go to work and come home, watch Casablanca or Big Lebowski. I mean, and then I started, and that was like, what, I mean, I would have White Russians because of the Big Lebowski, but I was never an alcoholic. But I remember that was an addiction I had, because I was so screwed up about a whole sex thing, and yet I was so sexualized my entire life. So for other people out there that are females, hey girls, you're not alone. I had that too, and it always made me feel really desperate, and because it was like this constant thing. And it just made me feel worse. I had to cry often after the fact, but there I was, a couple of hours later, doing it again. And so yeah, I guess this book is gonna just, what skeletons? Let them all out. Who cares? Unless it actually helps somebody out there and goes, oh shit, I wasn't alone. No, girl, you weren't. Anyway, moving on. We spend our lives avoiding unpleasant experiences by taking another drink, devouring another chocolate cake, or masturbating for the 7th time today. We are actually causing the unpleasant experiences to last longer than they need to. Guess I was striving for affection in all the wrong places. Okay. The unpleasant thoughts, feelings, and sensations are impermanent, but also persistent. Trying to push them away is futile and always results in stress, anger, and suffering. Shame, for example. Empty. It is like we create a dam in the flow of experience. Rather than letting impertinence do its job, we block the passing of the pain. So I guess maybe there you go. That's the explanation. I was trying to block pain. We often do. That makes sense now, because it was the first time I was living by myself, not under the household of abuse, not under parents that were. So it was like I was by myself, and I guess I had too much time to think, so I was trying to pleasure myself out of it, out of having to think about everything I had just left as a young adult. There you go. Thank you for being part of my therapy, guys. I love you. Mwah. Rather than letting impertinence do its job, we block the passing of the pain. We often do this through suppression, avoidance, ignoring, and self-medicating, or by hardening the heart and shutting out life. Yep. But when we sober up, the pain is still there waiting to be felt. Some have been successful in suppressing and denying the pain in their lives for long periods of time, but the dam will always burst eventually. And there is nothing more painful than a lifetime of suppressed pain flooding through all at once. I can testify to that. Yeah, I call that was hell on earth. Or 2015, 2016, and 2017, whatever you want to go. Aversion is a survival instinct. To survive, we have to hate pain. But aversion doesn't leave us with much freedom or happiness. In our case, aversion leads to addiction, as it did for me. Our instincts tell us to hate pain, to get rid of it as quickly as possible, or hate the people that abused you. It's like, and it doesn't do any good to hate them. I'm glad I don't anymore. Our instincts tell us to hate pain and to get rid of it as quickly as possible. But our recovery deepens on a radical shift in how we respond to those cravings and aversions. How we turn that hate to love and forgiveness and acceptance. It's that twisting it of seeing the things that are causing your addiction, the hurts, the pain, getting out of victim mode enough to, with love, say, it's okay. For the sake of the rest of my life, it's okay. I forgive. I forgive. I want to be happy. No more aversion. What happens when you face it all and it's really ugly? This is the first time I'm reading this book as I read it to you. So I thank you for your kindness with all of this. My friends are back, so I'm gonna cut this one short. It's a lot. It's a lot. I thank you for being here with me as I still process it. This is why I'm reading this book. But I will finish this little section. Aversion is a survival instinct. To survive, we have to hate pain. But aversion doesn't leave us with much freedom or happiness. In our case, aversion leads to addiction. Our instincts tell us to hate pain and to get rid of it as quickly as possible, but our recovery depends on a radical shift in how we respond to those cravings and aversions. Now we are not suggesting that you just accept every painful experience that life presents you, or that you should never try to avoid pain or seek pleasure. Not at all. What we are saying is that there is a lot of unpleasantness about life that is unavoidable. While our instinct is to avoid it all, especially as people addicted to avoidance producing substances or behaviors, it is impossible to get rid of or avoid all the pain in life. The trick is to avoid what you can. The trick is to avoid what you can. Meditation is one of the tools that will lead to discernment about what pains to avoid and what pains are unavoidable and need to be accepted. As recovering addicts, it is important to enjoy pleasure as long as it is balanced and appropriate. We will need to find healthy ways to enjoy life. In the beginning of recovery, this can often prove challenging. After the intense sensations of drugs, alcohol, and gambling, the subtle pleasures of a healthy meal or a good workout often pale in comparison. Even great sex can seem lacking when compared to a crack binge or a heroin run. It may take a while to learn to appreciate and enjoy the simple joys of sobriety and recovery. As we practice meditation and start to live an ethical life, it will become more and more clear when it is time to accept the pains or enjoy the pleasures, and when it is wise to refrain or avoid them. It is possible to live a balanced life, a life that enjoys pleasure without clinging to it, and it's possible to meet the unavoidable pains with tenderness and care. We call this non-attachment appreciation and compassionate responsibility. We call this non-attachment appreciation. See, I've been working on detachment for so long because I didn't want to be codependent anymore. And so every time feelings come up, I'm like, fuck it. There, I say, fuck it. And then I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to be like that. I'm practicing detachment. I'm just going to be detached. And it's just, but it still feels like I'm just saying, fuck it. So this, we call this non-attached appreciation. I like that. And compassionate responsibility. Compassionate responsibility. And we'll go into more detail about how to develop these skills in the Eightfold Path. We are not trying to escape the human condition or the pleasures and the pains of human mind/body. Oh, good. Our job is to recover from the self-destructive tendencies of addiction and to live an embodied and fully human life. Well, I guess we'll keep, stick around and this channel still stays up. I guess we'll keep learning that together, because in retrospect, I guess I feel like I'm 3 years old in this normal quote-unquote life, and none of it is normal. So I love you guys. We kept it under 20 minutes. What's up? Woo! All right. I do.